Hi, everyone. That was scary. I looked as if I wasn't being able to connect to my internet. So far, so good.
We don't see you though, David. Are you there?
Oh, I don't know. I did update my internet, my Mac, so maybe I need to change some of the settings.
I think your camera just needs to be turned around, David. I think it's
Oh,
facing the opposite direction.
that's a good point. Thank you.
No problem.
There it is.
There you
Simple
are.
fix.
And Sam is muted.
Thank you.
There you go.
I heard myself just fine. I don't know. I said, we know David is not really camera shy.
No.
And Nalini, is that how you pronounce your name?
Yes, Kathleen, that's correct.
Okay.
I was just silencing everything because things like to go off in the middle of everything.
I hear you.
I have this paranoia that I'll be in the middle of a webinar and my doorbell's gonna ring for no reason.
My mom, when I was caring for my mom, she just passed away. But if I'd be on a meeting like this, I'd go and I'd tell her, I'm going to be on a meeting. And she said, well, where? I said, here, I'm going to be on the computer. And then she would forget and she would come in and she'd start talking to me while I was on the meeting. And I'm like, so I'd have to put me on mute and I'd have to run over and I'd have to tell her, I'm on the meeting, Mom. Oh, I forgot.
That is not just my mom. I spent 3 of the last 6 months helping out my parents. My mom had surgery and I do the same thing. I'm like, I'm going on a Zoom, Mom. She'd be like, okay, I'll be quiet. Forget that I'm on a Zoom and start doing something random, like run the vacuum, and I can do nothing but mute and try to signal her like, shh, want to call.
So better turn off my mail. Well, we have, turns out we have 37 people
Wow.
today. So I want to start on time, but let's give us just one more minute, 12:01 before we get started. If that's all right. I know we were very worried. We had like 5 people signed up for the first week after we announced this. And then suddenly there was an avalanche yesterday and everybody realized, oh my gosh, this is an important thing. I should be part of it. So,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, it's 12:01. So I'm going to ask you all to introduce yourselves very quickly, just with your name, your title, and your organization, just strictly. And then maybe as we go, people will add themselves. So I will call on you as you appear on my screen. Let's start with you, Kathleen.
I am Kathleen Wilsey and I am the treasurer of the International Hildreth Mere Association.
Oh, great. Yes. Is Hildy coming as well?
Hilly is there. She's muted and
Great. Okay, we'll come across her later then. Yes, I see her.
Is there?
Okay.
Oh, it's,
Next.
it's,
Go on.
Hi, how are you? I'm Dawn Norris. I am the creative manager at Concordia Conservatory in Bronxville, New York.
Great.
Mhm.
And Sam.
Good morning, more or less. I'm Sam Mink. I'm president of the Westport Community Theater, Westport, Connecticut.
And Laurie.
Oh, Lori Lewis, Marketing and Communications Director at the Cultural Alliance.
And
You're
Hilly.
all here.
Hilly. Hilly, I think you're muted.
She is muted and I don't know. Let me give her a text.
Okay, we can move on. Courtney? Great to see
Okay,
you.
I'm actually here.
Oh, okay, Hilly. Go
This is
ahead.
Hillary, and I'm the Vice President of the International Hildreth-Meyer Association.
Great, thank you. Courtney?
Hello, my name's Courtney Cronin. I'm a marketing and publicity leader. I do publicity at the Southern Connecticut Camerata, which is local, and I do marketing at Listen First Media in New York.
Great, welcome. Holly?
Hi, Holly Levy. I'm the Director of Education for Art in Common in Litchfield.
Sorry, for Art and
Art in Common?
Art
the
in Common, of
nonprofit?
course, Holly, yes. Sorry, I didn't recognize you.
No worries.
Bill O'Brien?
Hi, this is Bill O'Brien. I'm the treasurer and founding member of the Stratford Veterans Museum and also an amateur grant writer
Great, and you're based in,
in Stratford at Booth Memorial Park.
that's great, wonderful place. Tracy?
Tracy Kay, CEO at the Bartlett Arboretum in Stamford, Connecticut.
Kaylin?
Hi, I'm Kaylin Briggs. I am the marketing and media coordinator of the Lockwood Matthews Mansion Museum in Norwalk, Connecticut.
Great, thanks for joining us. And Samantha?
Hi, everyone. I'm Executive Director of the Weston History and Culture Center in Weston, Connecticut.
Great. Kimberly?
Hi, I'm Kimberly Henriksen. I'm the Executive Director at the Center for Contemporary Printmaking in Norwalk.
And right next to her is Megan.
Hi, my name is Megan Casella. I am the Media and Communications Coordinator for the Center for Contemporary Printmaking in Norwalk.
Great, thanks for both being here. David?
David Vito. I'm on staff at the Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Westport.
Great. And Alicia?
Hi, Alicia Martindale, Milford Arts Council.
Great. And Leslie? Hey, Leslie.
Hi. I'm Leslie LaSala with MoCA Westport.
And Dan Taylor?
Hi, I'm Dan Taylor, a Senior Marketing Manager at Stepping Stones Museum for Children in Norwalk.
Great. Patricia?
Hi, Patricia Spugani at Town Players of New Canaan, where I'm a board member and do a bunch of stuff. Thanks for hosting this, David.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for joining us. And Jane Fox?
Yes, hi, I'm a board member at New Canaan Chamber Music and handle all of our marketing and social media and PR. So
great, thanks for being with us. Robert?
How you doing? Robert Towns. I'm the Director of Public Affairs at Stepping Stones, and so I handle our marketing, our community relations, government relations, and also membership.
Great. Rachel?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Rachel Hollis. I'm the marketing manager at the Fairfield Museum.
Terrific, Rachel. Thank you for joining
Thanks
us.
for hosting.
Gillian? Gillian Doherty. Okay, let's go on to Lauren. Hey, Lauren. Are you there, Lauren? Okay, well, Gillian and Lauren appear to be here, but we can't hear them right now. So let's move on, as it's already 12:06. I want to very happily introduce Nalini Goolsarran, whose company Edge Space Marketing is based in Stamford and focuses on website development, social media marketing, and search engine optimization services. She works with small businesses, entrepreneurs, and nonprofits. And
Your hair's at 1 o'clock.
Yes.
What's the problem?
could you please, whoever
Hilly, you have to mute yourself. You're talking to your mom now.
Okay.
and I'm sure after this event, you'll be very interested in contacting Nalini for a whole variety of online issues. Nalini is definitely a community person. She works with small businesses, nonprofits, young people, and she volunteers a lot. So you can find her on SCORE programs. So I'm thrilled to have us join us for this 3-part adventure through Google Analytics. So over to you, Nalini.
Thank you, David, and thank you everyone for joining today. I want to start by saying search engine optimization, Google Analytics can be really, really complicated. What I've done is try to distill it down to the things you need to know. When you go into those portals and you go in, it feels overwhelming. And the idea for this is to make it simple for you. So while if it seems oversimplistic, I can get into a little more details when we get into session 2, if that's the feedback, but I've tried to keep it high level, broad strokes, and help you focus on the parts that you need to worry about. Don't worry about everything. They give you lots of stats, and we don't know, I don't even know how to use about 80% of what's in there. We focus on the things that actually matter and can make a difference for you, because you can get lost in the reports and really not make any progress. What I'm also going to do is show you the traditional, what's called universal analytics screenshots, and the Google for analytics, Google Analytics 4, they call it, so that for those of you who's already migrated over, you can see the difference between the two reports. What I will say today is really just about what is Google Analytics, understanding how you use it to benefit yourselves. And then when we get into session 2 is when I'm going to take a deeper dive into the reports themselves and get into what does the statistics really mean, what's good, what's bad, how to weigh the statistics against each other. Because a lot of the Google Analytics is interpreting the data. And so Google has tools to help you, and then I can give you some insights in terms of how you understand what that statistic means. So that's kind of what we're going to do today. So let me go ahead and share my screen and get into it. Share screen. Here we go. All right, so today is really the introduction. How do you as nonprofits use Google Analytics to benefit your organizations, get more donations? First things first, we're going to talk about generally the purpose of Google Analytics, why it's there, why you need it. We're then going to get into the Google for Analytics and what that means, what's changing. Some of you who might be already familiar with the universal analytics will see certain functionality go away. I know one of my favorite functionalities is going away, but I'll explain to you what's different. And then I'm going to take a broad stroke attempt at what the reports and the metrics mean today. And like I said, in session 2, we'll get into the deeper meaning of those reports and metrics.
And can I just say, Nalini, that all of these slides will be available and the recordings will be available if you need to go back and hear it again.
Yes, thank you. All right, so what is Google Analytics? Before we get into that, let's talk about search engine optimization by the numbers, because this is really, really important. The reason you need Google Analytics starts with the fact that people use the internet for everything. I'm trying to remember a day when I used to get in my car and leave my house, go to a foreign country, and I have no cell phone, I have no email, and you're gonna arrive there safely and arrive back safely 7 days later, and people aren't worried that anything happened to you. Imagine going out of contact with anyone for like an hour or 4 today, much less 24 hours, right? But 68% of online experiences begin with a search engine. And while you may say everything starts on the internet, what that really means is somebody went to Google, Alexa, Siri, and they said something or asked something. Whereas versus they just went and typed in the direct domain name, or they went to a bookmark. That's the difference of what this means. 53% of all website traffic comes from organic search. That means that when somebody typed in your organization or your mission or your goals or your values into Google, they found you 53% of the time. The other less than 50% is accounting for they found you through social media, a mailing you sent them, an email you sent them. It can come from other places, and you'll see that in your Google Analytics. It's important to understand where your traffic is coming from today, and of course, apply a measure of how user behavior is changing. 75% of people never scroll past the first page of search engines. This statistic is about a year old, and I'm waiting to see what's going to change. What we've seen happen now with Google is if you've been on Google, there's now something called infinite scroll. You type in your search criteria and you get to the bottom of what should say page 2 now says load more. And what they're trying to do is get past people get people past that thought process of, oh, I didn't find what I'm looking for on page 1, change the search criteria. People are more inclined now to click load more and then just keep scrolling down because it's not really giving them a reason to leave. So they're trying to help us that are on page 2 and page 3 get seen. We still want to end up on page 1, but the competition is really fierce for those 5 or 6 spots that you've got to get into for that specific competitive keyword phrase. So it's important to know that this is changing. And so when I get new stats, I'll be able to tell what's changed. But for right now, they're still saying 75% of people never scroll past the first page, but that's changing in the next year. 86% of people ignore banner ads and choosing only to click the organic search results. What does that mean? That means that when somebody goes to Google and types something, there's usually somewhere between 1 to 4 paid ads at the top called sponsored. They're usually marked sponsored. Those are the paid ads. And underneath that are the organic search results. A few people that I know have already been burned. They click the wrong link. They end up on a scam website. Some people just don't understand or want to click the sponsors because they're not sure what they're getting versus they just go down to the organic search results. Google used to actually actively tell us this, but because they now want to make sure you're paying for ads, they don't tell us, they bury this statistic. So just bear in mind that if you see something from Google saying everybody's clicking ads, technically yes, but as an organization, setting up ads can be problematic if it's not done by an expert and if it's misconfigured. I have had people call me asking me if I can help them fix $20,000 in bills from Google because they misconfigured their Google ads. One, we can't fix it because it was part of the terms and conditions that you agreed to. And two, I always recommend you work with an expert, don't DIY it. We aren't the experts. I refer that out because it's just a line of business that if you don't do it right, can be a little tricky for your organization. 61% of desktop searches and 34% of mobile searches results in no clicks. That means that people search for the results, and when they're reading the results that show up on the page, the title and the description that's there, none of them seemed compelling enough 61% of the time on the desktop or 34% of the time on the phone, where they didn't feel the need to click it. They changed their search criteria because what they were looking for didn't show up in that original list. 69% of search queries contain 4 or more words. This is becoming increasingly important because now your search queries include questions. And why is that important? In the past, when people think about their keyword, they're thinking of it as singular. Well, when we talk about keywords now, we're talking about keywords phrases. That means the full 4 or 5 words people are typing in because Google is leaning into what's called natural language processing, meaning it wants to hear the words the way we say it, not in the past where we had to type it in a certain way for the search engine to respond the way we want it to. And the reason I'm giving you all of these statistics is that if you understand why people are coming and how your keywords work, when you're looking at your Google Analytics, you can look at it with a little bit of an informed mind about, okay, people came via Google, these are the statistics that matter. They came via social media, these are the statistics that matter because it influences their behavior. So let's talk about the importance of Google Analytics. What we're looking at here on the screen is the traditional, what's called universal analytics. This is what the screenshot most of you are familiar with seeing if you're familiar with the Google Universal Analytics today. The Universal Analytics, or GA4, is a free tool from Google that helps you track and analyze your website traffic. It also helps you understand how visitors interact with your website to improve performance and engagement. And as nonprofits, you depend on people finding you if they're not already in your donor subset, right? You're looking for people who believe in your values, people who want to support your organization. And those smaller nonprofits that work with a small niche sometimes struggle to find those donors. The internet is your friend if you can get found. So using Google Analytics, we can look at the reports and assess, okay, people are coming, people are leaving. Like in this case, if we're looking at, this is a report from my business, I had 149 users come to my website in the last 1 month. They generated 177 sessions. I want people or everyone to understand the difference between users and sessions. A user is me, singular person, one IP address. A session means I said user came back to that website more than once. So I can generate more than one session. I looked at the Cultural Alliance website today, and then I look at the Cultural Alliance website tomorrow. I'm still one user, but I generated 2 sessions. So that's one way of interpreting this report. When we get deeper, we'll talk about the bounce rate and session duration and how that matters and what it means. But that's just to give you an idea of how just that little nuance can tell you, are people coming back to your website? That's something you want to know. If you're seeing people come to your website and come back to your website and come back to your website, but then they're not actually clicking any buttons, they're not actually calling you, donating, it could be a navigation issue. It could be a technical issue. It could also be a messaging issue. This is where you dive into the reports to figure out, okay, what else are they doing on the website? And that's where we'll get into some of that. This is when the measurement comes in. If you ran, like there's blips on this report, right? There's pikes and and valleys, right? I can look at this. Sometimes I see a client and I have a giant pike at the beginning of the report, and I'm looking at this. When you hover, you can actually see the actual date. And I might say, okay, what happened here on April 2nd that the number's way up here? Did you send a newsletter? Did you send a mailing? Did somebody feature you in social media? Were you in the news? Part of looking at this report is understanding what other marketing methods you're using and how they're influencing when and why people are coming to your website. That's how this is just how you can interpret. This one little screen alone can give you all of that insight. So this is what I talk about. There's tons of reports here. This one report gives you a lot of information just on that one alone. When we look at the Google Analytics 4, it now looks like this, which looks nothing like the report we had, and some of the statistics have changed. So the Universal Analytics is sunsetting in July. What that means is it'll still be there. And what is unclear is whether or not it will still collect data. So we don't know if on July 1st, you'll still have data coming from the analytics. We know that Google is already creating the G4 properties. So if you're familiar with your analytics account, each website or tracking is considered a property. And what you would do then is, if you're not already transitioned over to G4, you want to do that sooner than later so you can start building some of that historical data. What I will say is, between the Universal Analytics and the new G4 Analytics, it's a cutoff. They become two separate reports because they're tracking two separate things. So you will still have access to your historical analytics data. That's as far as I know. I haven't seen anything contrary to that. And then you will have your G4 Analytics going forward. And so you're going to have to, during this transition, we're going to have to look at both reports. The other thing that could become challenging for you is that if you rely on those year-over-year comparisons, like how was I doing last year to now, you'll look at those reports, but you'll have to interpret them slightly different. It won't be apples and apples anymore. It'll be apples and oranges. And I'll explain a little bit more. One of the reasons the Google 4 Analytics has come about and why it's so different is because of compliance issues. You may have seen Google's paying hefty fines across the world for breaching data protection regulations. So what that means is that they were tracking user activity and data at a level that was not allowed. The UK in particular, the EU have very strict data privacy laws that we don't necessarily have in the United States, or they're not being enforced. And so Google got into a lot of trouble around the world. So as a result, they came up with this new Google Analytics 4. The other thing that they're saying, so again, we don't know how to what extent this means, but they're also saying that 10 years ago was when the original Google Analytics was launched, and consumer behavior, user behavior has changed a lot in 10 years. We do know this from a marketing perspective. So that means that how they use phones, how they use computers, how they use search engines has evolved, and they're adapting the new analytics to that. That being said, I will say this. Interpreting your new analytics is going to take a little bit more work because it's not as straightforward as the old one, because it's supposed to give you more information, but it's slightly harder to find. And next week's session, we'll get into that a little more. But here are some new features that will help you. There is an enhanced machine learning and AI powered insights that Google's going to give you. And I'll show you a couple of those screenshots in later slides, where it actually, before we'd go, well, I don't know what this metric means. You can actually, Google has these pre-built questions that you can click on, and it'll give you the insight behind that. Right now they're pre-built. The idea is longer term, we'll be able to customize that, and we'll see how that evolves as AI and AI powered tools become more commonplace. We also have something called more flexible event tracking. Now you'll see here on this report, there's something in the middle called event count. In the traditional analytics, the Universal Analytics report, we had something called bounce rate. And I'll get into that in a moment. But what this really means is the bounce rate means somebody came to your website and they left. Imagine a bouncing ball. The idea is the ball came, hit the surface, and immediately left. It's a technical term. So when somebody said bounce, it basically means, you know, recycle a server or do something technical like that. In this case, it means that they hit your website and they left without doing anything. It's also termed a one-click search, meaning they landed on your website, they didn't click a button, they didn't necessarily scroll, maybe they did, they didn't go to any other pages. Event count is an attempt to make that a little bit more meaningful metrics by saying, okay, 856 times of the 183 users that came to my website, they scrolled, they clicked, they went to another page. That's a high level explanation of what that event count means. It doesn't give us any insight at this moment in terms of, well, what did they do? That's where we have to get into some of those future reports. So let's talk about some of those reports at a really high level. So here is how the Universal Analytics metrics look today. You have sessions, which is the overall number of visits to your website. So you'll see the discrepancy that there's users at 149 and sessions at 177. So to repeat what I mentioned earlier, 149 individual users, people, one way to look at it, came to your website and they generated 177 sessions, which means one or more users came back multiple times. Maybe one user came back 30 times. Who knows? We don't know that detail to that degree. The bounce rate is the percentage of users who leave without interacting with any other pages or elements on your website. So as I mentioned before, they landed on your website. It could have taken longer than 5 seconds to load. They got impatient, they left. It might have loaded incorrectly. They got impatient, they left. Or it landed and it didn't resonate. They're scrolling and they don't like the visuals of it. It's not visually appealing. It may be confusing. There's any number of reasons. And sometimes people bounce by accident because I know I do this. I mean to do something and I close the window, right? That influences your user behavior. What I will tell you this is if you are looking at this report and you have 100% bounce rate, that is really, really bad. What you're looking for is anywhere from 50 to 70% if you're using these traditional metrics. And I'll tell you why. Most users are coming to your website to validate that you're legitimate. Often, especially if they're older users or stuff, they might be just writing you a check. They might not be donating online. Then if we could be looking at things where there's a user experience issue, you'd have to get into the other reports to help you understand what could be happening. But if you have 100% bounce rate, 100 is bad. And unless you're an e-commerce website, you're not going to get under 50%. It is very rare that I see a website that is not e-commerce get under 50%. So as I mentioned before, you're aiming for about 50% to about 70% in your stats. My statistic, this is directly from my website, is 69.5%. I am quite content with that. By design, I do not want people finding me on Google and calling me and having me on the phone all day long price shopping. I'd rather work with qualified clients that are interested in my service. We can take the discussion a little further, and I'm not spending my precious little time in the day fielding just one-off questions here and there where I'm looking for a more meaningful relationship with my clients. To that same notion, you as nonprofits, you may want all of those phone calls because it's an opportunity for you to speak to a potential donor, potential volunteer, those type of things. This is where those search engine optimization metrics come in and you understanding what's meaningful for your business. The next statistic on this report that you want to keep an eye on is the session duration. The average attention span for a human being today is somewhere between 8 to 10 seconds. That means they click the link from Google and the clock starts from the time they click that link in Google. So 1 to 2 seconds for it to get to your page, another 1 to 2 seconds for your website to load. And if your website's not done loading in that time, that's where a bounce may come in because they say something's wrong. I don't have patience. I'm leaving. That's very often what happens. When you see something in this case, 1 minute and 5 seconds, this tells me that's a long time in the digital world for somebody to stay on a website, for somebody to stay on a page. And so 1 minute is telling me they're doing something. They're looking at my services, maybe they're looking at the portfolio, but they're doing more than just coming to the page and leaving or gathering information or validating. So if I saw 5 seconds there, I'd worry. I'm like, if the average time is 5 seconds, that might mean people probably aren't paying as much attention to my content, right? This is where interpreting those numbers come in. You may also see if you have e-commerce enabled, my website doesn't have this, it's called conversion rate. So in this particular analytics report, the old one, on the right side of session duration would be something that says conversion or revenue. It depends on if you have Google Ads that you were using before, or if you're an e-commerce website, you may see that. Traffic sources. As you scroll through your Google Analytics, this is the report you'll see that tells you, do they come from direct, organic, referral, social, or other? One of my pet peeves of this report is all the blues look alike. It takes me a minute to figure out which blue belongs to the other one. When you're in the report live and you hover on any one of these bars, it'll actually give you the breakdown in each category. So you don't have to sit here and match the blues and guess as to what the numbers are. You'll get your live numbers. Now, what does it mean? Direct means that they typed into the browser bar, like in my case, edgespace.mktg.com. They came directly to my website. They typed it in, they clicked a bookmark that they had on their browser. They didn't come from anywhere else, just within their browser. That's a direct link or traffic to my site. And if you're looking at this, about half of my traffic is coming direct. That means somebody's directly typing in or using a bookmark. Now, organic search is where they're coming from Google, and you'll see about the other 50% of my traffic falls in that range, and that's okay because they're probably validating it. There's a Google search type that's called navigational. So rather than typing in edgespace.mktg.com, they may type in edge space marketing, enter, and then the first one that comes up should be my business, and then they go to my business. I do it all the time. I am very lazy about trying to get all the letters in the right order. I typo it all the time. So I just type in the business name, the business shows up, and then I go to the website. I'm okay with my own behavior of adding an extra click to my life. Some people prefer it, some people don't. So that's how you understand the difference between organic and how it can influence your traffic. Referrals and social. So this is where, and the other one could be people have a VPN on. They could have privacy setting controls in place where they just aren't sharing the type of information that with Google so that Google can aggregate it for us. Referral can come from a newspaper article. For example, the post that David and the Cultural Alliance posted about the class coming, if it linked to my website, could be a social, or Google could tag that as a referral depending on where it came from and how the click got logged. So that's why you see some of those blips are a little smaller. Personally speaking, I don't expect to see a lot of traffic from social media because I don't have a lot of time to do my own social media marketing. And again, my marketing is by design. It works the way it's set up to work. The question for you is, if you're expecting more traffic coming from social, then we have to look at why is your social media not converting? That's how this report helps you understand. If you're putting a lot of effort and marketing on social media and you're looking at a report like this and you're seeing less than 10% of your traffic coming from social, it's an indicator that if you're expecting conversions from social media, you're not getting it, which you probably already knew, but this is putting it into perspective. Here we can get a specific sense of which pages are popular. This is very important so that you can understand which pages people are spending their time on. In my case, so if you see just the slash means your home page. That's okay. So 32 in the last 7 days. I didn't change this to a 30-day report. So this in the last 7 days, I got 32 people come to my homepage, and then 7 went to the contact, and they may go to the contact page, or maybe they landed from their searches on the contact pages. There 3 people went to digital marketing services, 3 went to portfolio, so on and so forth, right? What this tells me is, first of all, I had no idea people actually read my affiliate disclosure. That's good to know. So that makes me know that I need to, 1, keep that updated, and 2, it's meaningful. So sometimes if you have a page that you've put a lot of effort into building and growing, and you're wondering, is that even getting traffic? You can look at this report and see, and we can figure out, are you not driving to it, whether it's through your social media or links on your homepage? Is the messaging not compelling enough? There's some things to think about. In your case, you're nonprofits. You may have a page that says ways to give or donate now. Now, these links are always going to be the ones housed within your website. The link that goes to your third-party donation platform that 99%, if not everybody uses, will not show up in this list of pages users visit because they left your website. This is what's within your website. Now, if you have your donation form embedded on your website and there's a page for that, that page should show up here. So let's say you have a ways to give page and you have a donation options page, and maybe you have a donate now page embedded on your website. They don't leave and go to the third party. Using this report, you can see which page people are hitting the most, and you can figure out, is that an important page? Is that the right page? And it may tell you that a page that you didn't think was important might be more important than you think. It's one of those, sometimes we think people are going to use our website one way and people use it the way they feel like. That's kind of the takeaway from this report. Now let's look at the Google Analytics 4 metrics and what that means. So first things first, you'll notice that I mentioned this earlier, we have this event count. This is Google's attempt to try to make the content more meaningful. So now instead of it just being a bounce where we don't know what they actually did and what happened, we now have this event count that's telling us that people are scrolling, they're clicking a button, they're playing videos. Before, we had no statistics on whether or not they played that, video that you invested all that, funds into developing for marketing purposes. And if they filled out any of your forms, these are kind of across the board. And you can also set up custom event counts as you get more familiar with it. Here's what's interesting about this report. Do you remember on the previous report, I had average session duration at 1 minute and 12 seconds? I now have the average engagement time at 23 seconds. Here's the difference between these two metrics. On the old report, it's telling me the entire time people are spending on my website is 1 minute and 12 seconds. So that could mean they loaded the window and they went off to do something else, but the window is open. So it's considered a session because I haven't closed the window or left the website. What they're trying to do now is saying, well, that's not actually true. Just because the window's open, they're not doing anything. Engagement time means the time they're spending scrolling, clicking buttons, filling out forms. Look how short that is. 23 seconds. You may not think that that's really long, but if we think about what happened in the last 3 years, we had to spend 20 seconds washing our hands, which can feel like an eternity, right? So in the social media digital world, it's still an eternity. Like right now, my computer is being ridiculous. I click a button and I know I have to show a client a website and I'm impatient and I'm wiggling the mouse, hoping the page is going to load, but we know the page is going to load when it loads. My point being is that 23 seconds engaging may seem like a small number, but it's an eternity when it comes to the digital world. User acquisition. Now, these reports may look slightly different to you. These are screenshots where Google is now saying suggested for you and giving reports. The old analytics was kind of, everybody had the exact same view. Google is now trying to customize this view to what they think I think will be important based on my own behavior. One of the things Google is big on is user behavior. How do they use your website? How do they interact? And by the same token, Google is doing the same thing with us, with how we use Google Analytics. So now we have these reports that show user acquisition, engagement rate, conversion rate, and user behavior. Now, when we meet next week, I'll break down these reports and I'll find the place you need to go for some of these. These are metrics that you as nonprofits are going to be interested in. Engagement rate means like the percentage of time people are, like when we talk about engaged sessions, like they're actively clicking, scrolling, filling out forms, donating. Conversion rate could also be, in your case, clicking the donate button. It's as simple as that. As far as I'm concerned, in the nonprofit world, you have 3 conversion points: a contact form, an email, or a phone call, which are all, to me, one type of conversion, a donation where they immediately start donating from the online button, and then you have a 4th where they fill out the contact us form. Those are your really simple conversion points as a nonprofit. An e-commerce business or service-based business like myself, my conversion point is somebody called me, emailed me, or filled out my form. That is all I expect from conversion on my website. I have no need for them to buy anything. I have no need for them to donate anything. In your case, because donations are your bread and butter, that's what we need to drive towards. But a contact could work because you may be looking for volunteers at the same time. So it just depends on your organization and goals. And then last but not least, before we get into some Q&A, is this is where we talk about those AI-powered insights. You'll see here, Google is actually telling you, ask us these type of questions. They're actually telling us which questions to ask because they're guessing at what they think we need to know. They're using machine learning to analyze our data. They're identifying patterns and trends. And what you'll see across the board in all the learnings, all the writings from Google, it's all about consumer behavior and how they use your website. You'll see here you have your pre-built questions. So I opened up the panel for basic performance, and here Google is helping you understand in layman's terms, how many users did I have last week? What are my top pages and screens by views? What days do I get the most users on? How many users this year? And what are my top events by user? This top events by user is probably going to be one of the most meaningful metrics for you, because events, again, are scrolls, button clicks, conversions like donations or form submissions. So it's going to help you not have to put so much logic into figuring out what these numbers mean. It's going to do it for us. Now, I have not yet seen this in action. So between now and next week, I'll get some screenshots for you guys that'll show it in action. And we hope that it's meaningful. What I will tell you is anything in its infancy may not work the way we expect it to. So there's a strong possibility you're going to go in there and tell me, Nalini, my insights are garbage. Probably because it's so new, right? In another 6 months, in another 1 year, it may be very meaningful, or maybe it continues to be a developing feature. We don't yet know. And then lastly, you can get automated alerts notifying you when it detects a significant change in your data. Now, I have not gotten any of these alerts yet. So again, I couldn't tell you to what level of detail it's going to be and what it means, but it is a helpful standing point. Like, for example, what I hope it would tell me, like if your Google Analytics accidentally got deleted from your website or disconnected because of a maintenance update, and you don't know, and your web developer doesn't know, or your webmaster, because no one was paying attention to the little blip, hopefully it will send us an email saying, hey, we have no data for the last few days because the line goes flat because it's disconnected. That's what I would hope, because those are some of the most common things that happen, but maybe they'll see there's a spike in user behavior. Like I said, I've not seen these reports come out yet, the automatic alerts. So we'll see what comes up in the next year or so as we get familiar. Now, I know I talked a lot and I see one thing in the chat, so I'm just going to see if there's any questions, but feel free to ask away. And hopefully I haven't put everybody to sleep. All right, I'll stop sharing.
Nalini, we from our web developer, we got a sort of a customized Google form for Google Report. Is that something that you recommend, or can you just get it directly from Google Analytics? Is that
You
just...
can get it directly from your Google Analytics. I think some web developers are using white label tools that help interpret the data or make it look pretty or easier to read. I think it just depends on your comfort level. If you go into Google Analytics and it just looks like chaos and confusing, but the reports you get that are customized make sense, go with it. It really depends on what works for you and your technical acumen. I know there's tons of my clients that they literally call me and they're like, can you just tell us what it means? They get overwhelmed when they see the panels and the dashboard.
Hi, this is Holly. How do you go about getting G4?
If you go into your analytics, you go to analytics.google.com right now, you'll probably get a pop-up for it, to be very honest with you. Google has started pre-creating all the G4 properties, and it'll ask you which one do you want to link it to, and you can link it right to the existing Universal Analytics. Now, if you don't, then you just click add new property, and then it'll default you to the G4 analytics. And in the past, we used to create the Universal Analytics property simultaneously because of backward capabilities and all that. Given the sunsetting, a lot of that stuff's been fixed, so you no longer need to do both.
Okay, one more quick question. I do not have session duration on my analytics. Am I looking in the wrong place? I mean, I'm in traffic.
Do me a favor, shoot me an email with a screenshot. It might be a one-off issue. Maybe somebody customized your reports and it's stuck that way.
Okay.
Is that your Universal Analytics? I'm assuming it's your Universal Analytics because your G4 is not connected. Yeah,
Correct.
it might be a blip in the system. Well, send me a screenshot. That might be a one-off. I've never seen that happen.
Do we have your email here somewhere? Do you want to post?
I'll put it in the chat.
Great, thank you.
No problem. Any other questions, thoughts? I'll preface by saying when it comes to Google Analytics and all this stuff, there's no question that's too simple or silly. So just to make sure everybody understands, it's an even playing field.
Yeah, it may take people a while just to process and get their thoughts together.
I'll say this, if for any of you who, I'm assuming most nonprofits have a web developer or webmaster that maintains their website, your webmaster should be the one that's helping you reconfigure to the Google for Analytics, or at least make sure it's connected at the very least so you have data. What I do recommend is everybody at least once in a while, go into your analytics, make sure you're looking at the right property. And I'll include that in next week's presentation, screenshots of how to double check where you are. And just make sure you don't have a flat line. Because one of the things that happens is people have access to an analytics property, but it's not linked to a website or it's not collecting data actively. And so they think they have a report, but when you actually go to look at the report, it's flat. There's just zero traffic. And I really find it hard to believe that a single website gets zero traffic in 90 days. In a 7-day period, it's possible, but if you change it to the 90-day report, you should be able to see whether or not you have any data. And if you see the line flat at 90 days, there might be a configuration issue. Thank you, Alicia. There's a comment in the chat. It's helpful to hear it laid out instead of typing it out in text. Yeah.
Yeah.
It can be a little tricky to try to understand what it means. What I always tell people is like, sometimes with your Google Analytics, I'm really hopeful for the new insights, because we spend a lot of time trying to tell people, if this number equals this and that number equals that, it means this. But if this number is this and that number is that, then it means this over here. So it's like, you're really applying like a lot of logic to figure out how these numbers all work together.
I was the one who wrote, how long will the historical information be available once GA4 is in place?
I haven't seen anything specifically saying that. I'm going to assume forever, because right now the historical data, I pulled it from my client yesterday and we were able to go all the way back to 2017. He has 6 years of data in his current existing analytics. I would find it hard to believe that Google's going to get rid of it, because we need that for reference, right? Like, as I mentioned before, he was looking at a year-over-year comparison of, he just deployed a new product in his online store, and he's trying to see, is he getting more traction? Is he getting less traction? What does it look like? And what we realize is it's about the same, slightly better now, but it's really about the same. So I'm saying that to say, I would hope Google understands we need that historical data and they don't get rid of it. The only thing I can think of is, if the data privacy laws say they have to get rid of the data, then they will. That's the only caveat in all of this, because they're switching over to the new analytics for compliance purposes. The legal bodies may say you're not allowed to keep that historical data because you got it wrong.
Because months ago, we had another marketing roundtable and somebody mentioned that they had to hire somebody because they were told that they were going to lose all their information. And so they spent a ton of money hiring somebody to, I guess, make sure that they kept whatever they needed.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm just curious to know if that had any validity.
Not that I've seen. I mean, I don't know everything about the Googleverse, but I haven't seen anything specifically saying that the data is going away, please archive it. I mean, what they have been saying is convert over, but I hope they understand we need historical data. I mean, that's part of what Google knows, like, we're comparing numbers all the time.
Yeah.
And Nalini, search engine optimization, it's always mystified me a little. I know generally what it is, but just the specifics. You may be going into this later, but what is the connection between what you can get from Google Analytics and how you can improve your SEO?
Let's back up a little bit. So search engine optimization and SEO has what's called ranking factors. So basically, I like to think of it as a easiest way to understand it is it's a gaming system. Right? So if you're playing a video game and you get 1 point for doing something, you get 10 points for doing something. And then the problem with Google Analytics, if you do something bad, if you got 10 points before, you lost 100, right? So if you ever see one of my Google basics and I tell you about it, there's some things you want to stay away from. And we can cover that in detail if we want later. David, we can potentially do a session just on that, because that's a beast on its own. So what I'm saying about that is that the ranking factors come in different flavors and sizes. So that means that Google's looking for your expertise. It's looking for your trust. It's looking for your accuracy. So Google has this ginormous database of information. And so what it's looking for, because let's back up even further. One of my very first classes in college was CIS 101, which was how to search on Google. They taught us that you had to type in your queries a certain way to get the results that you wanted from Google, because it was so new. And for those of you who may have been using the internet back then, you may remember we had Ask Jeeves, we had Ask.com. There was search engines specifically for like different themes. This is a search engine for photography. This is a search engine for dancers. It was a very interesting time. And all of the search engines were competing to be the number one choice. At the end of the day, 10, 15 years later, Google is the number one choice of search engines. We still now have Alexa and Siri. It's really funny how Google somehow managed, just people's iPhones are using Google if you messed up a setting somewhere instead of using Siri's database. Right? So the reason that's important to understand is Google still uses that methodology today because it depends on all that ad revenue, right? I mean, they make billions just from ads. So if you switch search engines, they're going to lose that revenue, because Bing is still a thing. Yandu is another search engine some people use, and something with a W. I apologize. I can't remember.
Woohoo or Woofu.
Yeah, something like that. And so those are search engines.
Big one too.
Yeah. People are still comparing, like, and so some people still use Bing, some people still use Yahoo, right? But Google is still trying to maintain its edge as the #1 search engine. What does that mean? That means that it needs to make sure that when an end user, someone like you or I, type in something into Google or sends a question to Google or asks Google a question, the results it's feeding is the results they want. Google has to kind of preemptively know you're looking for a nonprofit in Fairfield County that works with boys and girls of this demographic. Somebody might type that in because they're new to the area and they want to figure out where they can donate or volunteer as they kind of get settled in their environment. That's when I moved here. That was one of the first things I did, trying to figure out who does what and what's my town like and those kind of things. And Google would serve up content in anticipation of what I need. Now, going back to those ranking factors, the ranking factors is the content you have on your website. It's the design of your website. It even factors in how much traffic you're already getting. So that means that for every 100 times Google serves up your website, it got clicked maybe 50% of the time, and the person beneath you got clicked the other 50% of the time. So then that's when Google might say, oh, this person got more, maybe they got 51, so they bump up above you. That's kind of how that vying for position works. There's another factor in this. Remember what I said way early on about how user behavior is the biggest driving factor behind everything? Part of the ranking factors includes me, the end users, on what I normally search for. What types of topics do I search for? Which pages do I tend to click on? And Google is somehow associating all of that to the results. Now, I'm telling you all of this to say it's basically a giant machine that's being fed all these factors. And at the time you type in nonprofit in Fairfield County, Google's making all of that assessment and saying, okay, here's the top 5 you need to see, followed by everybody else based on their statistics. And so that's the Google Analytics comes in to help you understand where you fall in that spectrum. So if you're a Fairfield County nonprofit and you're not showing up for some of those keywords, the analytics can kind of show you or help you understand that. There's another part of this called the Google Search Console, which gets even deeper into those keywords.
I have a question. How I kind of inherited our website. So how is there a way to search to know if you have an analytics account set up? I know it
We
sounds
might
like
be able to
a crazy
track-
question, but I really don't know. And I was
what platform is it on? Do you know? WordPress, Wix, Squarespace?
they use Campus Suite.
I would reach out to the Campus Suite help desk if there's a support.
That's what I was
center,
thinking.
and
Okay.
they might be able to look in the back end and say, like, if it was WordPress, Wix, or Squarespace, there's a place I could tell you to look, but those guys may be able to look in the back end and tell you what the analytics property is. Where it gets tricky is you then have to track down who has administrative rights to the property and get access. If that's not possible, you're better off just setting up a brand new one, connecting it to the site, and then you'll just have data from today onwards.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I've inherited a few nonprofit websites with the exact same problem. We've just had to start from zero because no one could find the original builder. Like I always find when I build websites, I always make sure somebody from the organization has access in addition to me. Because if I'm no longer here or something happens, there should be somebody else with access.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
When we go to part 2, will we be talking a little bit about how you actually interpret the information that you have?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of, yeah. So part 2 is it will get into like I was mentioning before, if your bounce rate is this and your visitor sessions are this and your user session is that, what does that really mean? And then I'll also show you examples of the insights from Google to see if that's actually helpful for you guys and see where it goes from there.
And this may be silly, but I don't know, there may be 1 or 2 people who don't actually know how to get that information. Like, where do they go to get the data?
Okay, I'll include I have some slides on that. I'll include in from another presentation. Let me make a note. Include how to get there. You got it. All right, and I'll also include how to switch between properties and accounts. Because one of the things you may find is let's say you go to analytics.google.com and you don't see anything. You might have to switch between your Google accounts if you have multiple emails and stuff. So I'll include that detail as well. Because a lot of times people have the access, but they're in the wrong email account.
Right.
Any other questions, thoughts?
I'm accessing my Google Analytics through Squarespace.
Mm-hmm.
So when as you suggested, I went to analytics.google.com and it's asking me to register, but I'm already registered.
Yeah, this might be a situation where you might be in the wrong email to see the
No,
account.
no, I'm definitely in the right email.
Okay.
But it's like when I go to my analytics, and maybe this is the issue with not seeing the session duration, I'm in Squarespace.
Mm-hmm.
So when I go to analytics.google.com, it's saying, register your user. You know what, I'll just try registering again and they'll probably tell me.
No, when you send me your email, we'll go
Yeah.
on a Zoom because I think it's still what I'm talking about. So let me show you. Hold on. Is it okay if I couple more minutes to show David?
Sure.
All right, hold on. Let me just open up a browser. Give me a moment. When I run presentations, I close everything to make sure it doesn't get glitchy. All right. Share screen again. All right, here we are. I just went to here, analytics.google.com, right? We see my pretty face over here, which is saying this is my account. And this is what I was talking about before. See this flat line? And if I change this to 90 days, I still have a flat line. If this website is really legitimate, this is telling me that there's no way a website didn't get a single click or visit in 90 days. Like, it's just, in my mind, highly impossible. At least one blip should be on this report. Now, when I click here, this is up here in this upper left corner. You can see where you can switch between properties and things like that. Here's what I will tell you. I know for a fact from experience, I'm in the wrong account, because while I have stuff here and this is happening here, this is not the account the Google Analytics is registered under. That's my personal account. It's supposed to be under my business account. So I'm going to switch here to my business account. And I'm going to bring up the same report for the same website when I get in there. And I'll show you how it's suddenly I have data and I have more properties. So Holly, I have a feeling the analytics property connected to your Squarespace has nothing to do with your email, but it might be just more like how you're accessing it through the analytics. And Lori, I'll make sure I include this again as part of the steps in next week's presentation as a reminder. And when it loads, it'll load the last property I had open sometimes. And in my case, because I manage and I do SEO, I have lots of properties under my account. So mine's going to look slightly different than yours. See how we got a squiggly line? We know that there's data, right? And so this is what we're looking for. I'm just looking for numbers, but I'm going to bring up the one that I just showed you, Holly, just to give you a perfect example of that one. That was Chanda Glidden. Come on. This is what I'm talking about. Impatience. It's been what, 3 seconds? And I'm already like, come on, website. I don't have time for this. And it's still loading. All right. So this is the same website, Chanda V Coaching, that was up on the other screen. Now we have data. So what that's saying is that that property that's in my other account is not connected to the website, but this property is connected. Now, when I say property, when you click on admin in the lower left corner, and this is a little more technical than many of you probably need to know. See this number here, UA1, blah, 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 blah. That's the property ID. Every property in Google Analytics has an ID. And what you'll find is sometimes, and I think Dawn, you asked that question, they're going to give you that property ID. They might not be able to tell you who administers it. They'll give you the property ID. So here, if I go to property access management, I'm probably the only one on here because she's one of the clients that doesn't care to get the reports, right? But if I get rid of this email, because I'm the owner of this property and no one else has access, this property, the analytic, like Google will still collect data somewhere, but it's going nowhere, right? It'll just go off to oblivion. And so that's the difference between how the reports work. And I'll show you, because Google, I did not, I'll be very transparent. This particular client, I have not gone in and collected the G4. So the earlier question, Holly, about how do I do that? There's a G4 property here already for her that I did not create. Google pre-created it. So when I open it, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds, at the point that I would have left and gone somewhere else because I have no patience, right? And that's the majority of users. See here, I didn't connect this, but there's data here already. So because of the migration is coming, Google's kind of forcing this. There may have at some point been a pop-up that says, which property do you want to associate this with, which you can then associate it with the original Universal Analytics property from your list. In your case, you should only have one. In my case, I have like 50, right? And here you can see the difference between the data and how that works. So just to recap, check this little icon here and make sure the email that's primary, the first one on the list, is the one you're logged into to look at your analytics. I'm technically logged into 2 emails, and I'm just going to switch it again just so you can see that same client has 0 data in this report, because this particular property is not actually connected to the website. It's the other property when it loads.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go back in and look.
Yeah, this is where it gets tricky. And since you're looking at it through Squarespace, this is what, to David's question earlier, do you want to use the customized report or the Google report? When you get into those customized report, they're going to take out and show you which metrics they think are important, as opposed to the ones you think are important. So you could always use both reports.
Well, this is great. Well, our hour is up, Nalini. Thank you so much. There's so much
You're welcome.
information there. Before everybody says goodbye, I've never done this before, but I've got a short poll for people to answer. Can you see it? Is it launched? If you could all answer those 3 questions, that would be great.
I have a question. I don't think I registered for the second.
Okay, you still can. You still can.
Okay.
Yeah.
When is that? Is that next Wednesday?
Yeah, same time.
Okay.
And we'll be sending out reminders to people to re-register. It's basically the same registration page. You just click the other date.
Okay. Yeah.
And then I will also have a very short 3-question Google evaluation that I'm hoping that you will complete. So. And
as the marketer, just to ask you all to please follow us on Instagram at Cultural FC, as in Fairfield County, and also on Facebook as Cultural Alliance of Fairfield County. So we hope we can interact with you there if you have any questions, if you're not already following us.
Okay, has everybody finished the poll? Please complete it for us. Thank you. So Nalini, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you all for coming. I'm excited for next week. Next week, I will tell you this. Next week, I'm going to hurt all your heads. So drink your coffee, bring your water and your pen and paper. I'm going to do my best to make it not complicated, but I will absolutely hurt all your heads next week. I'm going to be honest about that.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Thank you all. And I'll be sending you the slides and the recording if you want. Okay.
Thank you.
See you next week.
See you next
Bye-bye.
week.